welcome back to another episode of Wuhan Weekly, a podcast that follows the trials and tribulations of 4 Scottish teachers in China. I am Lewis Thomas Rowe, and with me today are Ruth Taylor.
Hello.
Tony Ingalls.
Hi.
And Dean McKinnon-Thompson.
Hello.
So we had a bit of a break over the past couple of days due to the national holiday. China turned 66 years old.
Yeah, the People's Republic of China is now 66 years old.
So we weren't able to get the podcast sorted because we were all off doing important things and getting very busy.
Like sleeping.
So we haven't had a chance to put up our podcast for 2 weeks. So how was everybody's holiday?
Yeah, ours was pretty good. Ruth and I got a little treat. One of our friends basically bought us tickets to go see the Wuhan Open tennis final. The Wuhan Open is a women's singles and doubles tournament, and it's becoming like a really prestigious tournament. And the final was between Garbine Muguruza and Venus Williams. Muguruza, I can't pronounce her name, was in the Wimbledon final, so she's going to be a very, very good player, and Venus Williams is obviously a tennis star, or was. So it was a really, really great day out. It was great to see this amazing state-of-the-art stadium on the outskirts of Wuhan, something that I didn't think I would get to do well in China, and it was just really, really enjoyable.
Sweet. What else did you get up to?
Well, I went to Baotong Temple, Lewis, with you, and it was very nice. We climbed up the pagoda. It'd been there.
Pagoda.
Pagoda, that's what I said, wasn't it?
Pagoda.
Well, we climbed up the pagoda. It'd been there since 1279. Well, in the year of the Yuan dynasty, Kublai Khan's era. And it was very nice, and it was a nightmare to climb up, but the views were spectacular. It was quite funny seeing Lewis, because you're like 6'3" or something.
I would say
huge.
yes, but it's 6'1".
6'1". And it's too big for me, and I'm 5'5.5".
You're like a wee gnome, aren't you?
I'm like a tall hobbit scampering about the undergrowth, and I was having to crouch down. So Lewis was like, I don't know, contortionist trying to climb up this.
We went with another foreigner, this American guy. I think he's actually listening, so hello. And he was in the same boat as me. He was really tall, and he had his bag on, and he had his camera. So he was just like lurching about all these corridors. It was really fun, though.
I've been up that pagoda.
Pagoda, you mean, mate?
I've been up that pagoda 3 or 4 times, and when it's a hot Wuhanese day, it is very sweaty work. So
I'm glad that we went during the holiday because there was not a lot of people there, and I can imagine that going up that tower would be an absolute nightmare when there's a lot of people, because queues are not normally a thing that is seen in China.
No.
I'll just leave it at that.
We also went to the bookshop, and I mean, I have to mention this, it was the best bookshop in the world for me, because I haven't been able to be in a bookshop in China and be able to look at English books, because they're all in Chinese, unsurprisingly, because we're in China. But I was at this bookshop, absolutely brilliant. I got like for 30 kwai, I got like 3 books. It was fantastic. Absolutely brilliant.
Excellent. Ruth, I think it was a couple of podcasts ago you were saying that you wanted to get fit again. Did you manage to do any fitness over the holiday?
I went to the gym twice, and then one day it rained really badly, and I was nearly run over by a bus, so I turned back, and I've only been once since.
Yeah, that's fair enough, though.
it was just really relaxing. It was good to finally have a chance to stop. We've been working since the start of September, so it was good to finally relax and take some time to gather our thoughts, because that hadn't happened properly since we'd started work.
Yeah, I think we all had really hectic summers as well, between seeing family at home or travelling here and doing all sorts of things, so it was nice to have some free time to not really do anything with. Also, we got paid before the holiday.
So
we were just throwing money about.
Flush with cash.
Okay, so we had a couple of listener emails last week, I think it was. We were supposed to do it at the end of the last episode, but it ran a bit long. So we will dedicate a whole episode to the 2 emails. The first email was from Ursula. She wanted to know what it's like being sick in China. So I thought we could go over a couple of things that we found while being sick here in China.
Which is surprisingly often, I would say.
Or unsurprisingly often.
Yeah. But before we even talk about getting sick, I think it would be good to talk about the medicals, like the whole medical procedure you have to do to even get into China.
Right, yeah, so it's pretty
rigorous.
Pretty rigorous. We had medicals, I think it's fair to say, especially last year before we came out. We had medicals before we came to China, And those medicals were not rigorous at all. They were fill in a form, ask you a few questions, take some blood maybe, at least for me. And then I came out here and you get taken to the visa medical center, I guess is what it is. I think anyone, regardless of whether you're a foreigner or a Chinese person, if you're a foreigner coming in or you're a Chinese person going abroad, you definitely have to go there to get an up-to-date medical. And there's all sorts of stuff that I've never even had done to me, like the electrode things that stick to your chest.
Yeah, they're just like massive sucker cups, right?
Yeah, really
Yeah,
weird.
they put like 9 of them on your chest. I don't know what it does, but
No, me neither.
they rip it all off at one. It goes like an octopus arm going off your body. It's
I
disgusting.
think it sends like an electric current through your body, so it checks something. But I'm not
Are you
sure.
alive?
Yeah, I don't know. I had to take my top off.
Ooh, here we go. I'm sure that created a massive crowd of people, did it?
No, there was like one woman and she like she hated her job.
Oh, okay. So yeah, you get all of that done, you get your blood taken, but before you even go out of the UK, you also have to do a medical there. Dean, you did yours at home, didn't you?
I did mine at home. The whole process is very robust, I think. You have to get your blood taken, you check it for HIV, for AIDS, you have to get doctors to give you the full medical, and it's the full medical, whole body check. You get checked for everything from salmonella down to the Black Death, the Black Plague, and everything. Yellow fever.
That is an option.
It's all on the form for taking. They have to check you for everything, the whole shebang.
Well, I was going to say, and it sounds like, Dean, you're going to disagree with me, but if I'm giving you advice, if you're coming to China, listener, and you need to get a medical, it was going to cost me a lot of money to get the medical at home. I ended up being charged £60. Now, that's not a lot of money when you take into account that it's quite an important thing, safeguarding your health. But at the time, it was a lot of money for me. I didn't have a lot of money. I was coming to China to start a new job, so I was in between jobs. I had saved a lot of money because I'd spent most of it on a flight to China, and I was really worried that I wasn't going to be able to afford the medical. But then you come out here and you have to do another medical anyway, at least I did, and it costs a fraction of the price and is way more rigorous than the one that I got done at home. So I don't know whether that's a damning indictment of the NHS.
Oh,
or...
I definitely agree. I would always recommend doing it in China if you've got the option, because the NHS takes light years to turn the decrepit wheels of fortune that is the bureaucracy there.
Dean's views are not necessarily
The views of the
views
podcast.
of the rest of the podcasters, yeah.
Okay, so we talked about the medical. How easy is it to actually get sick here?
So easy.
Well, first of all, we work at a school, and children are just walking...
Petri
One second,
dishes.
one second. Yeah, petri dishes. That was the word I was looking for. Walking petri dishes full of bogies and
That's what I was,
piss and poo. It's everywhere.
Snotty,
Yeah.
slobbering,
Yeah.
germ-filled
Yeah.
little pods of disease.
And what is the first thing they do when they see you? Teacher! Run up, they've got their hands in your face,
Kissing
hands on
you.
you. Yeah. I think maybe at school, it's ridiculously easy. If one kid has a cough, everybody's going to have it.
Well,
I looked down at one of the kids last week and he had like snot all over his face. And I just my co-teacher was like, Happy, can you deal with this? I don't want to touch
Get
him.
him out of my face.
Yeah, I was like, go away.
I think we mentioned it on the podcast before, but Ruth and I work for an hour at a kindergarten every Tuesday, and at the kindy, they're babies. So obviously it's like being in the primary school, but 10 times worse. It's the same. They have
no desk to hold them back.
Right,
They're
right.
free reign.
And absolutely no inhibitions either, so they don't care, you know? Like, I have kids who want to answer questions and they just come right up into my face and the snot's like all down their chin and stuff like that. They're spitting words into my face and I'm just like, oh, get away from me.
They
So
are,
it's-
I feel bad. They are so cute and
Yeah. Oh,
lovely.
yeah,
They're
yeah.
so enthusiastic. We're like, they're gross and full of germs.
I think that a big factor, especially in China, is this is a general rule. It's not just for kids at school. It's just that you need to make sure you get hand sanitizer and things on you at all times. People tend to just use water to wash hands, to wash everything. The soap is kind of like a new concept over here sometimes. I feel like that. And it's at the school, it's just water and taps. Sometimes there's not even water coming out.
Yeah.
And so the hands are just filthy.
And that's even if they use the water to wash their hands.
Yeah.
I mean, that is a very rare occasion.
They're
this
just
can
wee
happen.
babies, aren't
Yeah,
they?
yeah, I mean,
Especially
it's-
I would imagine that teachers back home or in the UK or in America or anywhere else in the world are going to agree with that or find that familiar. I think little kids, they're just little kids.
Yeah.
They don't necessarily have the manners or the personal hygiene and cleanliness that everyone else does. So obviously they're gonna they're going to be dirtier than everyone else.
Sometimes some of them just sneeze and they look so surprised. It's
What is this happening?
What is
it's
this?
so funny.
Okay, so we talked a little bit about the children, the snotty little bastards. What about the food in China? Is it a high chance that you're going to get food poisoning here?
So my dad's a chef, and the first thing he said to me when I told him I was moving to China was, you need to watch what you're eating there, because when they cook with oil, sometimes they reuse it, and that's really not good for you. Now, certainly, I have not suffered from food poisoning while in China, but I have witnessed it, and definitely my inner plumbing is not what it used to be because of what I've eaten here. But it's a risk. It's a massive risk here.
I do sometimes worry about the level of hygiene in the kitchens because I've had people in some of the restaurants. We've talked about what we mean by restaurants in previous podcasts.
We've talked about how grotty they can get.
And the key thing is like even small things like at the till, handling cash, and then serving the food out.
Right.
There isn't an awareness to use gloves or to wash hands in between prep and handling cash. It's just sort of all in amongst it. Yeah. So you need a strong natural immune system.
Like you said just there, we talked about this in the food podcast about the state of restaurants and what can be called a restaurant in China. There's no environmental health here or anything like that. So they aren't spotless or anything like that. They can be just holes in the wall. So God knows what's lurking in the corners there.
They're all certified, and there's a plaque in all the restaurants that say, is this restaurant an A quality, a B quality, or C quality? I think that's in terms of cleanliness and hygiene. But, so you would expect the C to be like horrendous, you cannot eat here. C is like, this is good. B is like, wow, this is amazing. And A is like, perfect.
No one has an A.
Yeah. So there's a lot of A's, but like, everyone will have at least a B. I've seen maybe one or two C's, and they have been literally hells.
I question the legitimacy of those plaques.
And that too, yeah. Someone could have just printed it off and stuck it on the wall.
But also, they probably get audited or looked at or whatever when they first open. So by the time we go, maybe like 5 years later, places been lived in.
But I would say, and this ties in with the food podcast as well, you really can't think about that when you're going to eat. Otherwise, you're just not going to eat. And arguably, starving yourself is worse than, getting ill from bad food or bad oil or just a general uncleanliness. So, and that, like we said in the food podcast, the food is great here. So,
and I would say after one bit of bad food poisoning, touch wood, I've been fine ever since. I think you build up a little bit of a resistance to it as well.
But yeah, you are advised, from a lot of Chinese locals here to not eat any of the street food for the first maybe 2 or 3 weeks, just so you can build up that immune system. So it is likely maybe in the first year you'll have a really bad spout of food poisoning, and then after that you're normally okay.
Yeah, definitely the street food is your biggest risk for getting food poisoning, or those buffet type places where you can go in and pick whatever food you want. And, they have the spatulas and the tongs, and then they're just being fired around all the different trays, and people are sticking their hands in and stuff like that. Like, definitely when I got food poisoning, or not food poisoning, but, a bad stomach, that was the reason. My arsehole was like a tap all night.
There's never any sneeze guards in the buffet restaurants either. So they're just, that's another thing to make note of.
It's almost always next to a main road as well. So not only is it just full of germs, it's full of petrol fumes as well.
Yeah, delicious. And guys in their stalls, they could just set up their stall next to an open sewer. So, yeah.
Hey, talking about the petrol fumes, you can still smoke in the restaurants here. So that's another big thing. When you go into some of these restaurants, the hygiene might not be the best, and then you've got 10 Chinese dudes all just chain smoking. So I know that can't be good for anyone's health either.
Did you tell the story on the podcast? I can't remember if you did or not, so I'm going to tell it now. About when you went to see that apartment and the door was closed and you went in to see the room and it was just 5 guys chain smoking and you couldn't see them because the air was grey. Sometimes in a pub or a restaurant it can be like that. Because there are just so many people smoking, and you come home after a night out and your clothes smell of cigarette smoke, and it's not very nice, and it's definitely bad for your health.
On top of that, there's also always a film of oily smoke from people frying food. It catches you in the back of the throat. So
the restaurant that we go to a lot for lunch,
on the corner.
Yeah, the other day we went in and I was choking on the fumes. I didn't know what it was he was cooking, but it was really bad. It's usually bad, but not as bad as it was that time. And I was like, okay, I'm going to go outside and get some fresh air. But then I remembered I was in China and there's no fresh air.
So you walk out from this smoky, chili-induced restaurant and you go out to the big bad world where there's just like 50 buses and their exhausts all just like blowing in your face. You're like, no, please.
And across the road there's like a construction site.
There's just some guy in the corner burning tires just because he can.
Yeah, I mean, the restaurants are all nicotine stained and smoky. There's no sneeze guards anywhere. People don't wash their hands. The air outside is just
you're just laying it down now, mate.
I think. But
why are you in China?
But so what I'm going to say is, on the other hand, a good aspect of all of being ill in China is the easy access to hard drugs.
Stone cold drugs. We got heroin, we got cocaine.
Yeah, see, when I get ill, I just drop a tab of acid. Sweet.
I don't know about you guys, but I find that the whole process, getting medication, is easy.
It's laughable, isn't it?
And some of the drugs I was prescribed with, especially when I had toothache, was so strong. They said, they made absolutely clear, despite the language barrier, you take one of these a week. It's that powerful. And of course, I didn't even need it. They just give you it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, they are very generous with the painkillers.
Well, I've not had any experience with having to get any medicine or drugs because we have painkillers and I don't know what else I would even try and get. But obviously a big thing in China is herbal remedies. And have any of you had any experience with that?
I had one experience with, it was like a Chinese herbal remedy. When we were in the old flat, it was me, Dean, and our other flatmate, Aaron. And we were just like cleaning the flat or whatever. And he managed to pour a whole boiled kettle of water onto my hand. I was in absolute pain. I was going down to pick up this bucket. And I was gonna like fill up with water and then mop it. And he just comes charging in with a kettle like, watch out! I'm like, what are you doing? You're mad. So anyway, all my hand was pretty badly burned, and I went to the school and I was like, look, I don't know what I can say at the pharmacy to get something to make this a bit better. So Miss Gong, she was like the farm liaison last year, wrote down on a bit of paper, like, go to the pharmacy and ask for this. I was like, right, fair enough. So I go to the pharmacy and then hand it to the girl. She's like, oh, ha. And then she scurries off behind the counter and she comes out with this little box. I'm like, okay, that's fine. Buy it, go back to the flat. And then I open it out, and it's just like a tube of toothpaste, and it's just like this brown cream. And I open it up, and it smells like fertilizer. It is absolutely rancid. So my hand's in pain. I don't
think fertilizer was the description you used earlier.
What did I use earlier?
I think you said it smelled like fecal matter.
Fecal matter, yeah. Right, okay, that was better.
Does fecal matter smell like fertilizer? I guess it does, probably.
Yeah. Fertilizer is animal.
Yeah. So, yeah, it was...
Talk about food.
Yeah. Remember, it was like the second episode. It was like, welcome to Wuhan Weekly. This week we'll be talking about our poo and piss.
Yeah.
Anyway, I get this stuff and I smell it, and I was like, there's no way I'm going to have this on my hand because I have to go into school, and I don't want to go into school smelling like shit. So I just
more so than usual.
Yeah. I mean, like normally I soil myself after all the bad food, but like this would be even worse. Anyway, I patch it. And luckily, there was some pseudocreme, that we had on us. Used that instead. And from that very bad experience, I've never gone back to herbal remedies.
I think in the Western world, there is a lot of skepticism about Chinese herbal remedies, or just generally about herbal remedies. So I guess your experience is not uncommon.
I did when I went in to get some medication for a headache once at one of these walk-in pharmacies. One of the things I did notice was when I had a colleague from the school help me, so there was no language barrier to speak.
Oh, we need colleagues to help us from the school all the time.
Yeah. And I was in there, and the lady was asking, "Do you want Western medicine or Chinese medicine?" And there was a point where I just had a headache, and I said, "There's only one medicine, and that's the scientifically tested medicine. It's not Western, it's medicine. This is just, witch doctor, quack doctor nonsense." And I did lose my temper really
Yeah.
badly. It's like there is no Western medicine. There's just
Is
medicine
that almost
that's
racist?
being tested.
I don't think it's
No.
racist, but it is a
It's just
bit
factual.
culturally
It's
insensitive.
just factual. It's just there is only one medicine. It's not Western. It's not anything. It's been scientifically tested that works. And then there's just herbal remedies that are like your granny's recommendation because she used to rub tea leaves in her chest to get rid of a headache or something. It's nonsense.
Yeah, well, I think that that kind of thing is really rife in China. There are a lot of sort of home remedies that we get recommended by our colleagues or by our Chinese friends when we're sick. And to be honest, it sounds like just sounds like common sense, first of all. And second of all, I'm not really sure if any of them actually contribute to you having better health.
The word prevention would be used very loosely here, I can imagine.
Yeah, but I don't know. I mean, when I was off sick 2 days ago, I went to school and I texted my co-teacher, and the phrase that I think everybody knows in China is have a good rest. It's like the standard phrase. If you have a headache, if you have lost a limb,
If your class is cancelled, like it doesn't matter.
Have a good rest.
Even if you're feeling good,
Yeah.
have a good rest.
have a good rest. And I think I think there is such a culture here of like sleeping and, you know, getting all of the appropriate amount of sleep. If you get enough sleep, your immune system does get boosted. If you have 8 hours a night, you tend not to get so sick.
That's it. I've just thought, like, that's an absurd way of thinking because they basically...
And I'm being accused of being culturally insensitive.
No, but they like purposefully make children stay up like really late and get up really early in the morning to do homework and to go to class. Those kids are not getting enough sleep. If anything, those kids need to have a good rest.
But they do have a good rest for 2 hours in the afternoon.
That's true.
We should send this podcast to no.
Do you want to? No, do Jeremy
God.
Hunt.
I was going to say we should send this podcast to Jeremy Hunt about working hard in China and having a 3-hour rest during the day.
Because he wanted to have the UK work lifestyle similar to Chinese, right?
I think it's a damn good idea. I don't mind 3 hours off in the afternoon every afternoon.
I agree, yeah.
I'm getting paid to sleep.
Yeah, if someone's going to pay me
I'm
to
all for
sleep,
it.
I will have that job. But
I think the point being here is Jeremy Hunt doesn't really know what Chinese people are like if he's making that
he's
comparison.
married to a Chinese woman.
Okay, massive swearball, but what other home remedies are we often given by our co-teachers and, you know, our bosses and things like that when we are ill?
Well, a couple of weeks ago, I was really sick. I think it was getting the flu or the kids giving me some virus or whatever. And my co-teacher saw me when I came into school the day after when I was better. And I was drinking a really cold bottle of water because it's really hot here at this time of year. And
24 or something, is it?
yeah, and so I can't drink any other water unless it's cold. And she was like, Tony, no, you can't drink this. You must drink hot water. Take lots of hot water.
Take lots of hot water.
Yeah,
Not
take
drink,
lots of hot water.
Take lots of hot
And
water.
that's a big thing here. People rarely drink cold water in China. They think it's bad for you. So there's always a kettle in the office or in the classroom or in a restaurant so that you can have hot water or tea. That's a pretty common thing to be told. Take hot water. What about you, Lewis? Have you been told to take any Chinese home remedies?
The only other one that I was given was to wear slippers indoors because apparently that gives you a cold. So we were in our flat last year and I was walking about barefoot and one of our Chinese friends came over and almost died with shock because I wasn't wearing slippers. And I was like, mate, it's 30 degrees outside. I'll be fine. Don't worry about it.
Of course, I remember then flatmate Aaron was ill. They said, wear lots of clothes, drink hot water, wear slippers, and open the window to let in fresh air.
Yeah, that's right. When it's freezing cold
Yeah.
here, everyone will wrap up really, really warm. They'll be wearing like 12 layers, and then they'll open all the windows. It doesn't make any sense, and not put the heating on. Another thing.
There are no central heating in China.
Right. And I think a lot of these things, they remind me of like an old wives' tale. I'm not really sure if that's a PC thing to say these days, but
I think we've just destroyed Chinese medicine as a whole.
Yeah.
So I think we're all right.
yeah, that's
Saying
true.
old
So
wives'
yeah,
tales.
they remind me of old wives' tales in quotation marks, like something your granny would say.
Yeah.
Definitely that thing about slippers. My nonna, my granny, she used to say that and still does say that all the time. And I do not own a pair of fucking slippers.
I think a big aspect to the dependence on herbal medicine, probably the absence of affordable healthcare in China. Because if you don't have good insurance, you're not getting good healthcare. So there's a big gap there, I suppose, with accessibility for a lot of people. Because it's all right for us, given how much we get paid, but it's significantly more than what the person in the street sweeping the streets will get paid, or even someone doing a hard job in an office 9 to 5.
Has anyone been severely ill or injured that they had to go to hospital because of it?
Yes.
Well, tell us.
I feel like everyone who knows me who listens to this podcast is going to be like, not again, Ruth, shut the fuck up about your head.
You're wee sweet.
Yeah, I was out shopping with Tony and our friend Jamie, who came across China to visit us. The plan was to go for dinner at this really popular restaurant. The restaurant was really busy, we had to wait for a table. We went downstairs, there was a big Forever 21 store, and I just said to the boys, I'll go look at the girls' clothes, you guys can go and look at the guys' stuff. And as I was walking around, I started to feel really, really dizzy, and then there were like a lot of big flashing lights flashing in my eyes. In my head, I was like, this isn't good. But I just kind of kept walking in the hope that it would like pass.
Because clothes are more important.
Well, no, because I didn't really know what to do, and my like instinct was like, go find Tony and Jamie. But I obviously didn't get that far. So the last thing I remember is like holding on to there was a table with clothes on it. The last thing I remember is holding on to the table, and then the next thing I vaguely remember is lying on the floor of Forever 21 with like Tony had the back of my head in his hand, and there was like blood everywhere. So what happened was I'd fainted and smashed my head off the floor and created this huge hole in the back of my head. So there was blood everywhere. Tony had been... Yeah, do you want to...
Yeah, so I feel like when you were blacked out, you can't really tell that part of the story. But so like Ruth said, Jamie and I had gone to look at the guys' clothes, and we were just casually shopping, and a staff member came over and was like, please help me, can you speak English? And I assumed that she just needed help with someone to help her in the store, like to buy some clothes. So Jamie walked over, and I just stayed looking at the clothes. And then Jamie had been away for what seemed like an eternity. So I was like, where has he gone? So I went over, and lo and behold, Ruth was splayed out on the floor. Felt like she was doing like a snow angel, but instead it was in red. And there was like blood gushing from the back of her head. So I am terrible under pressure like that. So I was like greeting and everything. So I went over, and I had to like stop the blood from flowing and all that. And then you eventually woke up. The last thing I'll say about that is, the thing I remember most about that scenario was Ruth kept asking, I need to go to the toilet. I need to pee. I really need to pee. And I was like, Ruth, you can't do that right now. Like, that is not going to happen.
Yeah, I remember waking up, and I remember being really confused. I didn't know what day it was. I didn't know where I was. I didn't know where I'd been that morning. I didn't really know. I was like, why is Jamie here? He doesn't live in China. I was so badly...
Go back to your home.
Yeah, I was so badly concussed, and there were loads of just Chinese people staring, and they'd all gone and bought me like bottles of water, which was really sweet, but also completely useless. But anyway, we went to the hospital in an ambulance, and I don't really remember that part of the journey. And the next thing that I really remember is being in the hospital in a bed, like in a waiting room, and they put me on an IV, and they gave me an MRI scan.
It was very efficient. It was
super efficient, because obviously when you have like X amount of money to pay for, like the insurance is going to come through, and everybody was staring because obviously I looked super different and had a huge hole in the back of my head. And then they were still building part of the hospital, so there was like the new part of the hospital on the right, and then the old hospital on the left. And to give me stitches, they had to take me from the new hospital to the old hospital. So they took my IV bag, and then I was sitting on the bed, and they wheeled the bed across the car park in the dark to the other hospital. But because I was sitting up in the bed, the mattress was made of plastic, so it was sliding off the bed, and the IV was in my hand, so I couldn't hold myself up. So I nearly slipped off the bed. No. And then they just gave me some stitches, and I got to go home.
There's a really, really wonderful, grotesque photo of Ruth's wound, which we'll try and throw up on the Instagram. Mm-hmm. I feel like that photo hasn't been aired out recently, so it's due an appearance.
Yeah, but then, so I had my stitches in. I didn't get that many, but it was traumatic all the same. And then
how were the doctors?
Really helpful. One of them spoke English. We had a colleague who could speak English and Chinese, so she came and helped us with all the paperwork that we had to fill out. The doctors were fine. They were really, really nice, especially at the hospital. When I got my stitches out, I went to one of the clinics on our street, and he had no fucking idea what he was doing. He had made Tony hold a torch over the back of my head.
I was basically taking my stitches out.
With a big bit of pliers. There was a nurse watching. It was more traumatic than smashing my head open. the worst part of the whole thing was getting my stitches out. I don't know whether because I was more conscious at this point in time.
Yeah.
But I thought it was going to be
Or
sick.
just had some guy yanking at the back of your head.
No, he had a big pair of tweezers and he was like, I can't see them. And the clinic looked like something out of the Crimean War. It was terrible. It looked like a field hospital.
Yeah.
It was so awful.
And that's what goes for like a GP surgery here.
Yeah.
There's no such thing as that. It's just these street clinics.
Yeah, where there's like loads of people sitting in chairs at the front with like an IV in their hand being rehydrated. And then you go through to the back into this tiny room. Oh, it was just terrible.
I would say that the worst part of it from my point of view... And, like, the worst part of
Tony, it was so difficult for you, mate. I feel so... Every time I hear that story about Ruth smashing her head open, I feel so sorry for you, mate.
Well, but the thing is, the worst part about the Chinese medical system, health system as a whole, and I think that this is something that I would say the NHS is really great for, is when you go to the hospital and your loved one or you yourself are really sick or injured, the last thing you want to think about is handing over money or filling in paperwork. And yet, that was the first thing that got shoved in my face when we walked through the door. And I wanted to go make sure Ruth was okay and they were doing their scans and giving her what she needed to be given. But instead, I was filling out paperwork and handing over, not that much money, but, handing over quite a lot of money, which you don't have to do with the NHS, obviously. That's the great thing about it.
Also with the NHS, nobody's ever paper-clipped a bandage to the back of my head, which is what happened with Dr. Incompetent. It was awful. He was looking for paper clips. I was like, where are those going? This is not, helpful.
Yeah.
It was, oh, man. Never again. I don't even know why I fainted, but I feel like it had something to do with not being hydrated. So currently, I have a litre and a half of water.
It is easy to dehydrate, especially in the summers here when it hits 34 degrees Celsius.
Yeah.
You need to be drinking like 2 litres of water a day.
Yes.
I'm genuinely surprised they didn't just see the hole in the back of your head and be like, a good rest and some hot water will send you home. Yeah. There we go. And all the doctors are standing, shaking their head and shaking each other's hands like, yes, we've done a good job. We sent her home with hot water and a good rest.
Well, when I went back to school, I had this really awful bandage that I had to wear around my head and I didn't want to leave the flat.
You did look like a war victim.
Yeah, I looked ridiculous. And so I went back to school and the vice principal at lunch was like, I'm really surprised you're here because if all the other Chinese teachers would have taken weeks off. And I was like, well, if I'd known that, I wouldn't fucking be here. But I thought
it was so strong.
Yeah, so strong.
I've never needed to go to hospital for my own well-being, but what about you guys?
Yeah, I went to the hospital to go to the dentist. So the dentist, you get some private dentists, but the city we were in was quite small. So the dentist was inside the hospital. So I was eating some food and I chipped one of my teeth. It didn't hurt or anything, but I thought I'd better go and check just in case the root was showing or anything like that. So I went to the dentist, which was, as I said, in the hospital. I go upstairs and I go into the dentist part of the hospital and there is legitimately about 30 people crowded around the dentist chair. So the dentist is got a patient on the chair and there was just 30 people gathering around it. He's just doing a routine checkup on this kid. But I didn't understand why everybody was watching. So I was just like, right, I'm going to remove myself from this. I gave the doctor my papers and I sat down. I was sitting down. I was a bit worried because people who know me from home, I'm not the best with the dentist. I got a lot better back in the UK, but when I saw this, it just brought back all these fears in my mind that my teeth are all going to fall out or something. I don't know, something crazy.
You're asking for a Valium?
Yeah.
Put me to sleep.
I don't want to be awake, please. So it comes to my turn. And there's still maybe about 20 people standing up, just crowding around the dentist chair. Obviously, there's a colleague with me because I can't speak that good Chinese. And I ask my colleague to tell everybody to sit down. I don't want to see them. So the way the dentist was is there was the chair and then around the corner there was a full waiting room with 5 or 6 sofas. And I just asked him, I said, can you ask them to sit down? And he asked the doctor and the doctor told him to sit down. But it was a revelation, I had invented a new medicine or something like that. He was like, wow, that is such a good idea. And everybody was like, oh, of course. Why didn't we think of that? So they all sat down and I was like, right, good. At least that's one thing out of my mind. So I go to sit down in the chair and you know how they have the lights above it and they have the little sink beside you. So I sit down in the chair and then look over the sink and there's just blood all in the sink. I'm like, right, okay, this isn't good. Look up at the light and there's blood on the light. So I don't know how he's done that because it's one of those movable ones, right?
It's something out of marathon.
Yeah, but so he's obviously pulled it down to have a look in someone's mouth, but then blood's just come firing out their mouth.
Oh my God.
So I'm freaking out. as Dean was saying, even in the restaurants, they're not very hygienic because they deal with your money and then they deal with the food. So there's a lot of cross-contamination there. This guy was also dealing with money because we had to pay him when you got in, as you were saying before. But then he had his gloves on and he was just about to jump into Mamu. So I was like, well, if that's the condition of the gloves, there's no chance in hell that all of the equipment is going to be sterile. So anyway, I just bear and great, and he does the check, he has a look, he's like, yeah, it's chipped, but it's fine, nothing's showing. If you want to, I can remove the filling, and because it was on a tooth with a filling, you can remove the filling, I'll put a new one in and then build it around. And I was just like, no way. Yeah. I am not getting anything done in here because my face would fall off after 2 weeks. But yeah, that was my probably obviously not as good as Ruth's have been showing up here.
Not as traumatic, not as good. It was way better.
Yeah, obviously not as traumatic as Ruth's, but I was still genuinely terrified because I felt like it was World War II and I was again in a field hospital and they're like, sorry, there's nothing we can do, we're just going to have to chop your head off. I'm sorry. I think on that higher note, I think we've covered getting sick. So Ursula, hopefully that answered your question. I've only got one other thing that I really want to talk about, and it's the school's policy on getting sick here.
Yeah, when I was sick, the school weren't very sympathetic. They said, okay, you can take the day off, but we'll dock your pay unless you get a doctor's note. And it's absurd to go and get a doctor's note because 1, it's a hassle. 2, I don't know where the doctor is. 3, I can't speak Chinese. And 4, it costs about 500 to 600 yuan to get a doctor's note, and I would be docked 200 yuan a day. So if I'm on for 1 day, it makes absolutely no sense for me to go to the doctor. And I didn't need to go to the doctor. I just had a bad virus. I was run down. I had the flu, whatever. I just needed I needed a good rest and some hot water. That's all I needed. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense why they would make you go to those lengths, but they're safeguarding their investment, I guess.
Okay, so we had an email from my friend Kirsty who wanted to know about how we access the internet here and if it's easier, if it's difficult. I'm sure there are a lot of kind of stereotypes and misconceptions about accessing the internet in China, so we'll just briefly try and answer that now.
Excellent. So first of all, I think it'd be interesting to talk about what the internet speed is like here. I assumed when I got here it'd be super fast optic fibres and all that kind of stuff, but what is it actually like?
It's dog shite.
Huh?
It's run
Case closed.
Yeah,
it's really slow.
Yeah, it's really, really slow. Trying to get a video to load or trying to stream something, especially on iPlayer, which I know you're not supposed to use outside of the UK anyway. But
I don't stream anything illegally here. Cut that.
Trying to get a video to load is a total nightmare. Last year when I was in school some days at our old school, I would try and load a video, like a 6-minute long clip, just to watch in my break. You used to have half an hour between some classes, and it just wouldn't load. You'd get 30 seconds in, that would be it.
I have to say the internet for us in our apartment this year is much better, and I think that has a lot to do with the fact that the way you choose your internet service provider in China, there are lots of different ones, and often the internet service provider is chosen by the community in which you live in. So if you live in a community that has China Unicom as their internet service provider, China Unicom has to be your internet service provider. You can't go further afield to get the better connection, the faster speed. You just have to go for whatever it is.
You'll find that especially a lot of the students who are listening in the UK, you'll find that Virgin Media install all their wires in the apartments, and they give you the chance to change, but they always make it hard. So like, well, you could go with someone like BT or Sky, but then we'd have to take all the cables out, and then we would have to do this and do that, and that would cost an extra £100. Or you could just buy our internet. So it's I feel very similar than if you're a student in the UK than if you're here in China. And Ruth, you were saying about the videos, the internet's quite slow. Is that because you are getting these videos on sites that are inaccessible here in China? Yeah,
so trying to load a clip on YouTube, especially at school last year, would take me a really long time. I like to watch a lot of vlogs and things, and it was just almost impossible. This year in our flat though, it's pretty good. You have to leave them to load. It's kind of like maybe 5 or 6 years ago in the UK when you used to have to leave something to load and then come back and watch it later. But it's okay. Yeah,
so normally if you try to watch a video on YouTube or iPlayer, it normally takes a bit longer. But China has its own browser called Baidu, and if you watch a video off that, it's normally instant. So I always find, depending on if you're going for content which maybe isn't accessible here, it's harder to get the downloads and it's harder to stream it with good quality. But if you are downloading or watching something from a Chinese site, it's normally fine.
So guys, how do you get around the fact that some websites are inaccessible?
I think I speak for all of us when I say we use VPNs.
What does that stand for?
I have no idea. I was actually going to fess up there and say I have no idea what the abbreviation is. Do any of you guys know?
Yeah, so a VPN is a virtual private network. And again, I don't know as much of the technical side as I should, but it just basically says, oh, your computer is in China, so you can't watch this, you can't watch that. But if we pretend that your computer is now in America, you can watch this and you can watch that. So that's basically what it does. It just moves the virtual location of your internet connection to another country.
So how do you find that works, Dean?
I find it works very good. I mean, it allows me to access the newspapers I read and some websites that may be sensitive to for Chinese users. It allows me to access things that, as part of my daily routine, I've come to depend on and expect.
VPN providers are much like internet service providers in that there are different ones to choose from. They all have their pros and cons. So that's something to think about as well if you're coming to China.
Mm-hmm.
If you are coming to China, you can go on my Twitter and you can see which one I use and not use it because I tweet at them all the time for being hopeless.
Yeah, fuck Astral. Cut that out.
No, keep it in.
I've always had a good experience with Astral.
We have a terrible time with them. I don't know whether it's because... So you can totally cut this out.
No, yeah,
but I don't know whether it's because we have like the home sharing plan, so like we both use the same account at one time.
Yeah, maybe it limits you or something.
But it's total dog shit.
But yeah, I just don't understand how a company that says that they're
is this going in now?
I don't know, but no, you can cut it out. But I don't understand how a company can have their function is to get around the fact that some websites are inaccessible, and then bring a notification up on your phone that says, sadly, China is making the internet quite inaccessible right now, so we're having some problems. Yeah, but it's your fucking job to get around that, so fucking do it.
Anyway.
So some people I talk to about China often feel disheartened when they find out that some of the content on the internet is inaccessible for people here in China. But I find that, especially in the UK, you can limit yourself quite easily depending on who you go to for your news or who you choose to be your news outlet. But biased is a censorship in itself. So depending if you are politically biased or the news outlet that you choose is politically biased, you will censor yourself. I don't want to go into too much detail because I want to keep this podcast as political free as possible. But I find that it's very easy to censor yourself in the UK depending on who you choose.
And so it's easy to over-egg the extent to which this is a problem here in China.
Right, sure.
It's a matter of perception and people misunderstanding China and how China is and how it functions. I find the whole topic has been over-egged.
And I think at the end of the day, we can't really speak on behalf of Chinese people. We live here very much as Westerners in a foreign country. You know, we live here, we have VPNs, we are removed from that, and I wouldn't really want to speak on behalf of people who don't have that option.
And I think that's ultimately the bottom line.
Yeah, it's not our place to say.
Okay, that'll do it from us. Hopefully we managed to answer your questions, Ursula and Kirsty. The listeners at home can find us on social media. Whereabouts are they, Tony?
You can find us on Facebook, search for Wuhan Weekly Pod in the search bar.
You can find us on Twitter at Wuhan Weekly Pod.
You can find us at Gmail at wuhanweeklypod@gmail.com.
You can also now follow us on Instagram at Wuhan Weekly Pod. And if you are feeling generous or you have some free time, it would be really great if you could write us a review on iTunes or just give us a star rating.
Don't forget to recommend this podcast to your friends.
Okay, that'll do it from us, guys. See you later.